Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today for this first in our Lexton customer-centric mindset series, and we're focusing on curiosity. We appreciate it takes just a couple of moments for people to arrive, but we'll get on. It's being recorded, and obviously you're here already. So my name's Christopher Brooks, and I'm a global customer experience specialist working for Lexton. And we are very excited to bring you this particular topic, and even more so delighted to be joined by Tom Kerr. Now, Tom and I have worked together for almost 20 years. Tom has led significant research budgets and all within some of the most well-known household brands, and has been a fellow of the Marketing Research Society for many years, and plays a very significant role with Aura. So you in the research world will be familiar with Aura. You're going to hear a lot from Tom. There's a reason Tom and I have worked together, and certainly from my perspective, I've learned every time we have an interaction. So welcome, Tom, and we'll come to you as we go through the session.
Thank you, Christopher. Delighted to be here.
Okay, so what's this about then? So we have been studying for the last 15 years now the significant behavioral traits of CX leaders. And what we've identified, there are 7 that actually exist. And these are going to be brought to you in a series of 7 different webinars where we'll introduce each of them. We've done a number of interviews with CX leaders, observations during live engagements, and these 7 always kind of punch through, and we thought it was worth spending some time and just unpacking them in different 30-minute sessions. So for the purpose of today, we're going to focus in on curiosity, and as you've signed up for the first one, you will be invited to future sessions as well on the different mindset traits. So let's start off with curiosity. What do we mean by curiosity? Well, it's a study in psychology that's probably only about 20 years old. So it's relatively new, but fundamentally, curiosity kind of is what makes us different to any other kind of species, because we are very curious by nature. There's a really interesting study that was done to test just how curious other species are, and what became very obvious is using monkeys to get a reward mechanism was that they went for an instant gratification over being curious about delaying to understand what the reward might be if they left it for a few moments, and they couldn't do it. They had to go for the instant gratification. So why are we curious? Well, I mean, we all know when we're younger, we're very curious. It's kind of a cognitive development piece. Our mind is active. And why is it so active and trying to seek the answers? Well, because we don't like uncertainty. We get really uncomfortable with uncertainty. And it's very, very important for us to be actually thinking about getting some of those answers. So you could say it's a survival instinct. You know, it's a mechanism we have to actually know the answers so we can decide ourselves which choices we want to make. The flip side of it is there's an awful lot of reward to curiosity as well. You will see popped up on the screen is a poll. We've got a couple of these. Just fill them out as you feel free. Like to understand kind of from your perspective just how curious you are. So as I say, it's got a reward to it as well. You actually can get some a better outcome by actually being curious rather than just accepting what's gone before or closing your mind off to it. Now, when it comes to thinking about consumer behavior and actually trying to get a better answer, obviously research is well known in this space. And Tom, I'd like to bring you in here because obviously we are talking about how you can get people to be more curious. And so what does it mean when it comes to customer research? What are you looking for? And what are the sorts of indications that you've had to work with to make yourself more curious in a constant way?
Well, I guess in the first instance, each of us is curious to a degree. Some are more curious than others. And the thing that you have to be able to do is to exercise that curiosity. I mean, clearly from childhood, and you've referred to it already, Christopher, we're curious because we need to learn. We need to be able to avoid risks. We need to be able to develop and to grow and to be secure and safe. I can remember when I was young, my mother actually saying to me not to put my hand on the iron, and I was curious to know why I shouldn't put my hand on the iron, so I did it. Burnt my fingers, probably took the top layer off, and I've never done that again. So there's a natural level of curiosity there. You learn, you understand, you move forward. And I think within the world of research, there always used to be an idea that researchers came up with the best questions. Curious to know if that's still the case to this day, now that I've moved away from corporate. But research was populated by people who were naturally curious, who would turn over the stone, who would look to ask more questions, who would keep asking the question, why? And the challenge for that within business is making sure that you take people with you, and not assuming that they have the same degree of curiosity. So
Sure.
it's a fundamental within the world of research to be curious and to ask penetrating questions.
So we come on to, what can curiosity lead to, and I thought it was quite interesting. If you look back through history, curiosity has actually led to some significant developments that we kind of take for granted now. I think possibly the one that's most famous, but it's not actually the most important, is post-it notes about 3M, a scientist at 3M who was attempting to try and get a really strong adhesive, but he couldn't make it work. It just didn't work, and a colleague of his, really interesting name, a guy called Art Fry, who actually started to see, well, there's some benefit of it not being over sticky. And I can actually write on these things, put them on the wall, and that was the invention of the post-it note. But in other ways, things such as Velcro came about by a Swiss engineer who was out walking his dog and saw the birds, the kind of the birds in the fields were catching on his dog's fur, and just kind of wondered, how does that happen? So he spent time examining it and understanding, and found the tiny little hooks that existed, and it helped him to kind of understand, there's a way of fastening here, and that led to Velcro. I mean, there are other things such as Viagra as well, believe it or not, was an invention through curiosity, where Pfizer, the well-known pharmacy organization, were looking to find solutions for I think it was angina and hypertension. I think it was hypertension, and they discovered a really curious side effect in the male participants in the study. And I won't say what it was, but you can imagine what it was. And that led to further research, which led to eventual kind of creation of Viagra. So curiosity, if you've got that curiosity mindset, it can take you to different sort of places. And with that in mind, Tom, what new outcomes do you kind of get when you are curious? How does it help your brain arrive at different places?
Okay, how does it allow your brain to arrive at different places? Well, I think the marriage of curiosity, asking the questions, aligned to going into any operation, any project, by design, thinking about going into it with eyes wide open. If you do both, rather than having preconceived ideas of what the outcome is going to be, you're taking on a challenge, and you're looking to find a solution to that challenge. But you should go at it and be open to other possibilities. In the first instance, you have to very swiftly define rather the pivotal question to know what you're going after.
Yeah.
So go through the iterations of what is it we're really trying to solve here, and then to go at it and move fast and being prepared to fail, to learn, to go further forward. And with eyes wide open, you can actually then go through the incremental steps towards finding your solution. And you may well find that what you're trying to get to, in the instances you gave, with eyes wide open, they saw completely different solutions. Now, clearly, from a research perspective, there's a challenge, and you have to come up with a solution to that challenge. But often, the challenge hasn't been well defined in the first instance. So, your curiosity has to lead you right from the beginning to define what that question is before you can then move forward.
But with that, Tom, I mean, you've got to suspend your biases and your assumptions, have you? I mean, as in that research seat, you can't take into the room the answer that you believe it's going to be. I mean, how do you do that? To be curious, how can we hold back on our assumptive understanding?
Yeah, you've got to be, you're moving into realms of emotional intelligence here, Christopher. I mean, very much you've got to be aware of your biases. You've got to try and get to a point where you are so aware of your biases that you are countering them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think within your head, if you hold the thought that if you have a natural sense of doubt, rather than a sense of certainty, then you can move forward. So recognize your biases, try and kick against them so that you know exactly where you're likely to be derailed by your own mind state, and tackle the project with it again with an openness of mind, being prepared to listen to what others are saying. I mean, the group will always come up with a better answer than the individual, so listening to others, being inclusive, getting others within the team, within the mix, and outside of the team, of course, because you want to influence those people ultimately. So yeah.
And I think some, I mean, I've sat in sessions with you where we've heard things come through and I've kind of nodded and you go, you know, almost like dismissive of it, just kind of let it run, let it run. You kind of don't jump to the answer, which is a real skill, isn't it? To not be able to kind of jump to the answer.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, many practitioners in the world of research will say it's a good idea up front to have an hypothesis. So an idea of what the end result might be. And, often when you're preparing a presentation, you'll think in terms of what the final chart's likely to be. And that's just one notion of what it could be. And it's fine to have that in your mind, but you can't target that as the answer. I mean, all you're doing then is justifying your early thought. You've got to be prepared to listen closely, because often insights are often missed. They're often missed because they don't seem important. I guess the one everybody uses is Dove insight that women are uncomfortable with their bodies was overlooked in the beginning. And it was only after the event and doing some post-analysis, a post-development review, that it was identified that, hang on, that's a really significant, that's a genuine insight. And of course, Dove had
I was speaking. I was speaking to someone within an organisation who has they've got a serious idea hit, and the idea of being curious, disruptive. Although we had a good conversation around, well, actually, going to try and hit that deadline, you could be curious about achieving it. So I think, where there's an emphasis on efficiency in an organisation, you have a real issue. I think deeper questions. So creating a physical, either a kind of, we use Mural, it works really well, and happy to share with anyone who's on this call if they want to know more about that, this space. But you can keep coming back to it. And interestingly, we have a client who's based up in Cambridge, and they said they don't quite understand how it happens, but when they go into this space, which is full of insights from customers, their mind goes to a different place. So I think it takes a while. You need a space to do it, but it's a really powerful way of doing it. The second area is, I found it really interesting. There's one simple phrase which can make such a difference, and that's when someone asks a question, you simply reply with, "That's an interesting question." Now, it doesn't matter whether you've heard that question 100 times or not, but if that's the start of it, one, it helps that individual feel really confident about their own confidence, in terms of, do I understand this topic, and secondly, it just shows, and from a leadership perspective, you're interested in whatever people are going to say. So it's a really easy prefix to put before anything else, but that's a really interesting question. Let's just expand upon what you've asked there. So I think there's some small things you can do and some significant things from your perspective, Tom. I mean, when I talk about the insight room, we worked on the Living Insights project, which was quite interesting, but other ways in which, how do you be more curious? Any other thoughts from you?
Oh Lord. Well, openness, continue to ask, turn over the stone, ask questions, be prepared to ask the dumb question, be prepared, have the confidence to appear foolish in the train of thought that you're going down. I mean, there's we have within us this aspect of not wanting to be embarrassed. This idea that we have to be right all the time, but it's okay to fail. And it's okay to fail fast. We don't aspire to fail. Nobody aspires to failing, but you can actually put yourself in a situation where you can ask the dumb questions, which in your mind, if you see that as failure, you won't ask them. So just redefine success and give yourself permission to explore and to ask those questions and to be inclusive. Bring others into the frame and be prepared to go out on a limb. Take risks because we learn through taking risks, and it's curiosity that leads us to take risks. So allow yourself to go out on a limb, to take a risk within reason, to explore and to learn, and then to move forward. And I guess with most of the things we do, we're looking to find solutions, or we're looking to find incremental ways of performing better.
Mm.
We can do those in small steps. It doesn't have to be giant. Doesn't have to be giant leaps.
Well, we have a thing called a customer centric mindset gym. And in there are a number of different activities to kind of test what you're doing. And some of the simplest ones are about being curious about what would happen if I was to swap my knife and fork over and eat the other way around? What would happen if in the middle of summer I was to go out with my big coat on and my hat on? What would other people think? And just doing the opposite of what you normally would do, which puts you outside of your comfort zone. And you realize then what it feels like to be different and curious, but actually it allows you to start testing and training yourself to become more curious about the small things that happen around you. We've got another poll that's come up. Or this is the previous one. Would you say you're naturally curious? So it's great to see. I think 63% said yes, very curious, and by virtue of the fact they're here, I'm glad. I'm glad of that. But the next one we're going to ask is now you've attended this and heard our piece here. Do you think you will make your company more curious? I mean, it's in us to do it. So polls up on the screen again. Be really interested to get your views on that. Whilst we do, I've actually got some questions, Tom. So I'm gonna that have been sent in. So I'm just going to read a couple of them out. Wouldn't mind getting your views on them. So the first is, what role do leaders play in helping to create a culture of curiosity within organisations?
I touched on it earlier. I mean, the culture of an organisation tends to stem from the leader. When companies develop culture over a long period of time, but a leader can actually affect that, and it's a cascade process where the leader sets the rules and the guidelines and the operating principles for his or her direct management team, and they then do the same thing for their teams with an element of character, but they'll pay heed to the way the leader has set things up, and so it cascades through the business. If you're fortunate enough to be in an organization where there is an openness, where the leader is customer centric and not paying lip service to that, then great. If you happen to be in a culture or an organization where that isn't the case, when there isn't that kind of openness, you have two options. One is to try and influence through the way that you manage your team and give them permission, and then draw others into the way that your team operates. When I think in terms of research, because research impacts upon all the different parts of the organization, if you bring in even the finance team or the HR team or the risk team or whichever, all the other teams, so that they're part of the process, you can start to influence that way. If you can't change out, then long story short, I mean, a long time ago, I was given this advice. If you're in an organization where culturally it doesn't fit, then you have to move. And step.
So now's the chance. If anyone who's watching has got a question, then feel free to put it forward. But I think just to add to that, I think it's so important to think about this why question, and keep going deeper. We'll come into one of our sessions on active listening on kind of techniques in terms of how you can improve the active listening. But one of them that I think is really interesting to actually allow people to share more with you, because sometimes you hear something and it's in our minds. If you think when we're at school, we're looking to provide an answer to the question. So a hand is being raised. We're rewarded for providing an answer to the question. So our mind is already starting to solve the question when it happens. But actually, in terms of curiosity, if you go the opposite way, and when somebody speaks to you and you simply remain silent, that emptiness, that quietness is uncomfortable. And what you often find, as you know, Tom, is you can get more information coming through. You get richer information coming through. And then you find yourself going down a different path because actually you've got some fresh information that you can ask a different question and go in an alternate direction. So sometimes the techniques that, if you're trying to work with colleagues and things, the techniques that you apply can actually help you get to a different answer, even though you may not be naturally curious. You just apply some kind of techniques. As I say, when it comes on to, we've got a session on active listening, and we'll kind of help teach some people some of the skills that we've learned over the years. I do have any more questions in the chat coming through? Let's have a look here. Anything more there? I've got another one here. How do you encourage curiosity in teams that are traditionally not customer facing? So obviously this is one where you've got people who aren't working with customers. How do you get them to be more curious about the customer, Tom? What's your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I kind of touched on it, didn't I? Because that's about bringing them into the team early. When you're looking to influence, let's refer to them as stakeholders. They may not be directly stakeholders in any project that you're doing, but if you think of them as stakeholders and draw them in and include them in the operation. I mean, I've often find, even when you look at finance departments, inviting members of the finance team along to take part in developmental workshops, ideology sessions, ideation sessions. They'll come in with a fixed mindset of this is nonsense, it's marketing, doesn't make any sense. You're wasting my time. It's not task, it's not numbers. But give them half a day in the environment and they start to see what it's all about. And then they start to open up and they start to contribute. So just by bringing them in early and showing them what you're doing and getting their input to it as well, they can then be champions for what you're trying to do and take that word out. And then you find that actually other people within the finance, risk, HR, whatever, are suddenly interested in finding out more about it. And in the past, I found myself running customer sessions with each of those departments in turn because they wanted to find out more about what we were doing. And so, yeah, you just have to reach out and include them.
I remember working with one of the largest carpet retailers, and they couldn't understand. They had poor satisfaction and all these stats, and they had programs to try and improve it. Kind of what it turned out to be was largely down to problems in the warehouse, people who are not customer facing, and the magic was to actually put up TV screens in the warehouse and put customer quotes in there in terms of the impact it had to them, and the team who couldn't care for stats and figures now were curious to understand, why are people thinking like this? We think we're doing a good job. And it turned out there was actually a process fault that was leading to problems, but nobody could get to this process thought until they started to be curious about, why are people saying that? We're doing the job we're asked to do. Why are they saying that? Why do they feel like this? This is not good. So I think, to your point on bringing out some of the insights, sometimes allowing people to see things that they don't normally see, and it's that then they get their own emotional intelligence, they connect with it, and we don't like to see failure. So therefore, I want to now get involved and understand this. So you've got to find the right mechanism to let people in, haven't you? Well, look, Tom, thank you ever so much for your time. I hope everyone has enjoyed this. It is just a dip into the world of curiosity, as you can appreciate. We do have a curiosity index, which is we're going to send out to everybody. I think my colleague Kat might try and drop it in the chat, but if not, it will be sent out to everyone. If you want to complete this, it's just a 10-minute survey. That's all it will take, probably less than that. And what we will provide back to you is two things. One, an aggregated view against the other people within the index that we've already got information for, as well as some ideas, depending on where you sit on the index, in terms of how you could be more curious. So it's a little something we'll provide to you, as well as this will be recorded, albeit in bit parts, as we saw earlier. But Tom, thank you so much for being our first guest on the customer-centric mindset. Really appreciate it. If people want to get hold of you, Tom, what's the best way?
Through Aura. You can do it through LinkedIn. or tom.kerr@aura.org.uk. That's tom.kerr@aura.co.uk.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And thank you to everyone who's joined in or is watching this afterwards. We'll be back with another webinar on one of the next customer-centric mindset traits. And we'll have a different guest who's an expert like Tom is in this one. The original curio. I kind of jokingly say to friends that Tom's first word as a child would have been why. Without doubt. So thank you, everybody. And I wish you a good rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are watching us from. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.